I'm glad you had a good time. Melanie's mind's a mind of fanatic. Melanie's mind so great you can't have it. Melanie's mind the mind of fanatic. Melanie's mind's the great you can have it.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Spooktober on my channel. This video is a really crazy video that happened in 2002, and it's the Lululemon Murder. So if you don't know, Lululemon is this leggings, yoga, fitness brand that sells really expensive yoga pants. When I looked online, the most expensive leggings ranged from $148 to $178, and the cheapest ones were $88. So this is a very high-end fitness brand. And before I go into the murder that happened at this Lululemon's, I want to give you guys a little bit of the background on the owner and founder of Lululemon's, and his name is Chip Wilson. So Lululemon has been in some controversy because of the CEO. And one of the things that he has said, which is really controversial, is that he came up with the name Lululemons because he thought it was funny to hear Japanese people try to say it. He said he thought it was funny that they couldn't pronounce the L's. And he told Canada's National Post Business magazine, and I quote, "It's funny to watch them try and say it." So this man is really twisted, and I'm not trying to get sued here, but he's kind of an asshole. Another thing Chip Wilson has said is that he prefers to use child labor in third world countries because it provides them with needed wages. I just don't understand who would say stuff like that. I know that a bunch of other companies also use child labor in other countries, but the fact that he just straight up says it. Another controversy with Lululemon's is that there was a problem where some of the leggings were see-through. And Wilson's response to this was, and I quote, "Frankly, some women's bodies just don't work for it." He also says that it just costs way too much money to make clothes for plus-size women. Another controversial thing that happened was that Lululemon's made a pair of yoga pants that claimed had seaweed in it and brought nutrients to women's bodies, and it had immense health benefits, and they ended up retracting those statements because scientists tested out the pants, and it turns out they had absolutely no seaweed in it and no health benefits, and there was as much seaweed in the yoga pants as there is seaweed in a cotton t-shirt. So it was just complete bullshit that they pulled out of their ass. And the last controversial thing that I'm going to talk about, I'm sure there's many more, is that in 2002, to celebrate the opening of the second store in Vancouver, Canada, they offered a free outfit to anyone that would stand naked out on the street for 30 seconds. Luckily, he stepped down in 2013, but still some of the things that he has said has just put a really bad name to Lululemon, and even just the fact that they're so expensive for what they are is a little bit crazy to me. So before I go into the murder, I just want to give a really quick shout out to my sources, and for the research in this video, I used Wikipedia, Murderpedia, the Washington Post Business Insider, and the podcast My Favorite Murder, episode 31. So let's get into this murder. Brittany Norwood was born in 1982, and she was 29 years old at the time she murdered 30-year-old Jana Murray, which was her co-worker. But let's just go to the next day, the morning of March 12th, when another employee of the Lululemon store in Maryland entered into the store, and she started hearing weird noises, which really freaked her out. She saw this guy and flagged him down and told him, "I have to open this store, but I keep hearing really weird noises, so can you come check this out with me?" And when he walked into the store, he walked into a bloody scene. Brittany Norwood and Jana Murray were on the floor covered in blood. Jana was dead and Brittany was on the ground tied up, hands and feet. Jana had been bludgeoned to death. There were knife and hammer marks all over her body, and on her head she had been repeatedly struck with a metal stand. She had over 330 distinct wounds on her body. And to just think about how much time it would take to cause 330 wounds on a person is just crazy to me. When the police showed up to the crime scene, Brittany explained that the night before, both of them were closing, and as they left the store, she went up to Jana and said, "Hey, I forgot something inside the store." So they both went back back, and then two masked men attacked them, and they stormed into the store with guns, and then they raped them, tied them up, and killed Jana. Brittany had injuries to her body too, so the cops didn't really think that she was a suspect or anything at first. Her pants were slit at the crotch, so it all just looked really bad to police. And apparently this area of Maryland is really, really fancy, so nothing like this had ever happened, and everyone was just really shook and scared that something like this had happened in this area, because as you know, Lululemons are really high end, so usually they're in a pretty expensive mall. Like if you live in Denver, it'd probably be in the Cherry Creek Mall or something. So because of this, the police started a manhunt and started interviewing people around the Lululemon store. They interviewed the Apple store, which was right next door to the Lululemon store, and the employees there recalled hearing two women fighting and yelling and arguing, but they never reported it or called 911. And I understand, like, how could they have possibly known that there was someone getting murdered next door, because that's not kind of what jumps into your head when you just hear arguing and yelling. So they didn't get in trouble for not calling it in, but it's probably something that they still live with to this day, probably wishing that they would have gone in and checked to see what was happening. Because they also said that at one point they heard a woman yell, "Oh, please God, help me," and they still didn't go in to check, but they assured the police that they only ever heard two women arguing and never heard a male voice. And that really rose suspicion in the cops, because if two men came and attacked them, you would think that there would be male voices heard too. A big break in the case happened when police went to go check Jana's car, and they found Brittany's DNA in Jana's car. And then they went to go ask Brittany, "Have you ever been inside of Jana's car?" And Brittany said no. So that was really suspicious to them, because she pretty much just lied on herself, because they knew that her DNA was in there. And also the police had the test results from both girls, because Brittany said that they had been raped, and the results came in and neither of them had been sexually assaulted. Also, they noticed that Brittany's injuries were all superficial and there weren't that many wounds or cuts on her compared to Jana's over 330 wounds all over her body. The police started studying the angles of the cuts and the wounds on Brittany and noticed that all of them were self-inflicted and that she was able to tie herself up in the position that they found her when they walked into the store. In the blood at the crime scene, there were two sets of footprints. Jana's footprints were not in the blood at all, but Brittany's was, and so was a size 14 male shoe. But what the police found was that Brittany had grabbed a shoe that was on display and made footprints in the blood to make it seem like there was a man at the crime scene, because she was blaming it all on two masked men. 6 days after this crime happened, the night of Jana's memorial, police arrested Brittany Norwood for first-degree murder. When she got to the police station, she started talking, and police found out that on the day of the murder, Jana had caught Brittany trying to steal a pair of yoga pants. And because of this, I guess it just caused so much anger and resentment that she felt the need to get rid of Jana and stab her over 300 times, and they found 5 different weapons that she used to inflict those wounds on Jana. And they were all objects that were found within the store. Jana had tried to fight back, and she had over 107 defensive wounds on her body. And they found a trail of blood leading to the back of the store, showing that Jana had been trying to get away, but she couldn't make it. The creepy thing to think about is that Brittany stayed at the store after she murdered Jana. She had over 10 hours to stage the crime scene and just sit next to a dead body. After the police pieced this puzzle together, Brittany Norwood was convicted in less than an hour for premeditated first-degree murder. And now she's in jail with a life sentence and no possibility of parole. And that is the Lululemon's murder, which when I first heard it, I could not believe it at all. When you think about this expensive, fancy, athletic brand, you don't ever think that murder could be tied into it. After this all happened, people would leave gifts and balloons and cards outside of the Lululemon store. And it's just really sad what happened to Jana because of someone's rage from doing something that she wasn't supposed to be doing in the first place. I hope you guys liked this true crime video, and if you did, just remember to like, comment, and subscribe, because I really do appreciate every single one of you that have subscribed to me, And if you haven't watched my giveaway video, go look at that. I just want to remind you guys the rules. You have to be subscribed to my channel, be following my Instagram. You have to like and comment "I want the giveaway" on the paranormal story video and the DC sniper video. And then sometime next week, I'll be picking a winner randomly. So thank you once again for all the support, and that's all from me.